Protests have been held in London over the introduction of digital identification. The ID will be needed in order to live and work in the UK.
Well, thousands have actually taken part in this through central London this afternoon, culminating here at Downing Street, where they wanted to make the point right outside the seat of power.
Breaking news. Digital ID is set to be scrapped. In a stunning admission of defeat, Andy Burnham has confirmed that once he's through the door of number 10 Downing Street, the brick card, also known as digital ID, is dead. Scrapped. It's binned. The digital ID scheme Keir Starmer forced onto this country without so much as a public vote or even a manifesto pledge is gone before it ever properly began. Let's remember what this was. A mandatory digital ID imposed on every working adult, policed by the state, championed by a Prime Minister who told the British people, quote, "You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have a digital ID." Well, it backfired so spectacularly, he had to water it down multiple times. And the country said no. Nearly 3 million people signed the parliamentary petition against it, making it the 4th largest petition in British history. It's not a fringe protest, is it? 3 million Brits standing up and saying they will not be tagged, tracked and catalogued by their own government.
The Starmer legacy is unravelling faster than a cheap suit on a rainy Tuesday in Westminster. And the latest casualty is the highly controversial digital ID scheme. Welcome back to Britain Underneath, the home of sharp analysis, where we peel back the polished layers of United Kingdom politics to see what is actually happening. If you value staying ahead of the political curve and appreciate an unfiltered, sophisticated take on British current affairs, do take a brief moment to support the channel. It takes a second to press that subscription button, and your support genuinely helps us keep bringing you these deep insights. Now, let's unpack the stunning political manoeuvre that has Westminster talking.
Well, by January this year, Starmer had already realised he'd gone too far with this policy, quietly dropping the compulsory element. Well, now Burnham has completely finished the job. A spokesman said that the resources being redirected to the cost of living crisis instead. And I'm sure there will be plenty to get our teeth into on the Burnham administration. But for goodness sake, let's celebrate a victory for common sense and British values. And I'm going to be the first to say this. Thank you to Andy Burnham for actually listening, unlike the hundreds of backbenchers who happily applauded it through. Labour backbenchers. How stupid do they all look once again? Whatever you do, don't let Labour MPs take any credit for this, well, 1,000th U-turn. It's their lack of a backbone that put us in this difficult position in the first place over digital ID. And a few commiserations here. Tony Blair, I'm sure he's crying in one of his mansions somewhere, as well as Starmer, whose legacy is going to be undone by yet another U-turn. And an honourable note to Darren Jones MP, who's been the face of digital ID. How unfortunate. This is, though, a massive, massive victory, a victory for the millions of people who refuse to be bullied into a surveillance state, dressed up and sold to you as convenience. This scheme was divisive from the day it was announced. It was unpopular in every poll that followed, and now it's finally dead. Perhaps that sums up Starmer's entire time in office. This is a victory for you, the people, and a sign to show that your voice can indeed change the course of.
The mandatory digital ID, once heralded by the previous administration as the ultimate modern solution for employment checks and tracking, is officially dead. Andy Burnham, preparing to step through the door of number 10 Downing Street, has confirmed that the brick card is being firmly binned. It is a spectacular admission of defeat for a policy that was pushed onto the British public without a manifesto pledge or a public vote. The justification from the incoming administration is pragmatic on the surface. Resources are being redirected to tackle the severe cost of living crisis. But underneath, this is a calculated chess move to clear out unpopular baggage before the hard work of government even begins. Consider the sheer scale of the public backlash. Nearly 3 million people signed the parliamentary petition against the scheme, making it the fourth largest petition in British history. The British public collectively looked at the prospect of being tracked and catalogued by the state and said a polite but firm no.
Well, I've got my panel here tonight. Former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley, former Conservative MP Louise Mensch, and journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah. Benjamin, I'll start with you. You're a fan of digital ID.
Yeah,
so are you unhappy to hear this news? Andy Burnham's perhaps one of his first acts as Prime Minister, at least this announcement tonight, that Andy Burnham will indeed scrap it.
Well, like most former Home Secretaries and most of the British public, because I looked up the data, 57% of people in a poll last year said they support ID cards. Conservative voters were the most likely to support ID cards. I think it would have been the right thing to do, because
that poll was taken before the following polls after it, right? That's one of the first polls, Benjamin.
Strange statement.
Well, no, because I know which poll you're referring to, but polls taken after the announcement of that policy showed a massive shift in public opinion.
I think the opposition to it was greatly exaggerated, and the fact is that if we want to stop the pull factors which bring people to this country illegally to work, and we have a very considerable black market, there is reason to think there are many more people in this country than official figures recognise, because it is surprisingly easy to work under the radar. You know, you have all these American confectionery stores and proliferation of Turkish barbers that seem rather more than the number of men that live in the area. Something like ID cards was going to be incredibly effective to make it easy to enforce employment law, to make it easier for police officers to track who's breaching it, and it also would have been much easier for us and our engagement with the state. 100 times a day we check our Face ID to get access to our credit card, to buy something, to engage with something like the NHS app. It would have been nothing more than that and made our lives easier. Now, I do understand why Andy Burnham isn't pursuing it right now, because he's not got very long as Prime Minister. It'll be maybe 3 years, 2.5 years. It clearly wasn't very well planned out. It did seem to come from nowhere as a government announcement, and I can see why he thinks it's probably not the bandwidth, it's probably not the thing to waste the political capital on, but I'm very disappointed.
Yeah.
By January, the compulsory elements had already been quietly dropped, but Burnham has finished the job completely. While the decision is being celebrated by many as a victory for common sense, it leaves hundreds of Labour backbenchers looking rather foolish after they happily applauded the policy through Parliament without a hint of a backbone. Let us pause for a second and take a breath. In the grand theatre of United Kingdom politics, staying informed is your best defence against bad policy. If you want to ensure you never miss an analysis like this, please do subscribe to Britain Underneath. It ensures you stay completely informed as these major transitions unfold. The debate around the digital ID exposed deep fractures in how we view the relationship between the citizen and the state. Proponents argued that an ID card would effectively curb the underground economy and make it easier to enforce employment law, particularly in cash-in-hand businesses. Yet the opposition was formidable.
Peter, what do you make of it all?
Well, my opposition to this scheme, largely came from a line that not many people had addressed, and that was, if you're going to make people carry a compulsory ID card, who are you going to empower to demand that they can see it? And that, of course, would have fallen upon the shoulders of the police, in all likelihood, as well as perhaps trading standards and other such bodies. And that was my concern, because imagine a glorious hot sunny day, of which we've had so many recently. You're in your swimming trunks, you throw your towel over your shoulder because you're going to go down the park, lay on your towel, put on the ombre solaire, other brands are available, right, and catch the sun. And as you go out your house to walk down the park, Plod walks up to you and says, "Where's your ID?" I'm going sunbathing, mate. Don't care. Where's your ID? They were just one of the sort of examples of the many, many problems that I could foresee with this. And Starmer brought it in as he became increasingly more of an autocrat by the day.
Yes.
So I'm very glad to see the back of it.
Louise, do you feel the same way? And, I know Conservatives in general have been fighting this. It's been unpopular with Conservatives. I know when Tony Blair tried to introduce it, it was fought quite staunchly then by the Conservative Party and many others. What are your thoughts, Louise?
Look, I mean, in World War II, the Germans went around saying, papers, please, papers, please. Yeah. We don't want to bring in a modern version of that in Britain. We never did. It's, as Benjamin says, obviously it's a worthy thing, stopping illegal immigrants getting illegal jobs. But there are many other ways to do that, other than making the lives of British people worse and going back into a more authoritarian state. What we need to do is increase the penalties for people who don't take checks on their employees, who don't bother to find out if they're illegals or not. If you're running a sweatshop and you're employing a load of illegal immigrants, you should go to jail. Yeah. There are many different ways of checking whether somebody's legal to work in this country. Digital ID is not the one. And by the way, a massive cybersecurity risk.
Yes. That was one of the biggest problems for me. Where this has been done, places like India before, I think they said 20 million people had their entire digital ID completely stolen. That included biometric data, and that data can now never be recovered. And it also puts the people who have had their digital ID stolen at massive risk, because once they've got their biometrics, those are things you can't fundamentally change.
Exactly. And do we really want our personal records and what we go to see our doctor about? Do we want them winding up in some server in Moscow? No, we don't.
But that already exists. You know, the NHS app has all of this information on it, so if someone were to hack that, they already could. And I would ask you, as someone who's lived in the US for a long time, you already have a so-called papers please rule, because I think you have to have your driver's license whenever you get in your car. You have to show a cop for any reason that he requests it. Is that really such a burden on the land of the free?
Well, carrying a driver's license to prove that you're entitled to drive really isn't much of a burden. We don't have to carry our driver's license, and I can't drive, don't have to carry your driver's license when you're walking around in the street. As he says, do we really want coppers coming up to us when we're on the beach saying, you know, let me see your digital ID, show me your phone? And that, by the way, would mean that we had to unlock our phone for the police. There's a consequence after consequence. And look, I hate giving anti-Burnham any praise. I am a Tory. But this was a good decision.
It was a good decision. And that's why I said it there. We do have to praise politicians, even if we disagree with them vehemently on their ideology and other things, when they make good decisions that the vast swathes of the British public agree with. And I think, going back through some of the other polling, this was unpopular with every single political grouping, from the Greens to Reform to Labour to Conservatives. So this inevitably will win him votes. Peter, I guess my argument's always been, and I think it's very similar to what Louise was saying, there is other ways you can police things like illegal migration, but also France, Germany have digital ID. Their illegal migrant crisis is far worse than ours. So was that argument doomed from the start?
Just a quick... Privacy advocates correctly identified the immense cybersecurity risks, pointing to international examples where biometric data was compromised and permanently exposed. Furthermore, former law enforcement figures raised valid concerns about the friction it would create between the public and the police if officers were empowered to demand papers on a sunny afternoon. This U-turn is undoubtedly a piece of low-hanging political fruit. For the incoming Prime Minister, it allows the new administration to buy immediate goodwill and look like it is listening to the electorate, all while quietly burying a very expensive administrative headache. But it also reveals a deeper truth about modern governance. Policy driven by automated control rarely survives contact with traditional British values of personal liberty.
Quick note, Louise, when you say he, the name's Peter, actually, by the way, just a reminder. No, there are many ways in which illegal employment can be tackled, some of which Louise has alluded to. And it was my fear that it would make the police so much more burdened with this and create an even bigger wedge that exists between the public and the police. And it's very damaging, the state things have got to at the moment. We really need to reconnect if that Pelian principle that the public are the police and the police are the public is to be firmly re-established. We need, of course, more money ploughed into law enforcement, into trading standards and the such like, because, of course, the death of our high street through barber shops, as Benjamin properly alludes to, the vape shops, all these kind of things that are really destroying our high streets at a rate of not need to be addressed.
But can I ask, you say it would take up a lot of police time. Surely, if you're a police officer...
I never said it would take up a lot of police time.
I thought you said it would take more of a burden.
I said I didn't want them burdened with the responsibility, in other words, with the legal authority of being able to demand your ID.
But when you have people for whom they have reason to question, so, you know, the kind of shops we've described that pop up, or people that they are arresting, surely there's a lot of bureaucracy at the moment in identifying who they are for certain that would be saving time by something like a digital ID or a physical ID card.
Your rampant naivety shines through, Benjamin. All it would have done would be a job creation scheme for more fraudsters who would have created counterfeit
Why
ones.
don't we just concentrate on, for example, making shoplifting a real crime again? That's something that people want to see. They don't want to see this nonsense. How much money would this have cost?
There is an argument to be made, though.
Make sure to stay with us until the very end of this video as we look at what this means for the future of Westminster. Managing a country requires more than just dropping unpopular schemes, and the real test for the new government lies ahead. If you want to keep tracking these hidden political shifts, ensure you are subscribed to Britain Underneath so you never miss our upcoming deep dives. Ultimately, the demise of the digital ID proves that public voice can still alter the course of a government. Thank you for watching, stay informed, and we look forward to welcoming you back for our next analysis.